In the autumn of 1967, an unusual sighting occurred near a large housing estate in Staffordshire, England. Bentilee is in the suburbs of the city of Stoke-on-Trent, and at the time was one of the largest housing estates in Europe. On the evening of the 2nd of September, many people saw what they could only describe as a UFO landing. Bentilee Estate is situated on the east side of the city and would have been a relatively rural area at the time, compared to the smoggy pottery kilns and manufacturing facilities the rest of the city is well known for. Surrounded by fields and just next door to a country park, the area was relatively peaceful. On the evening in question, residents were going about their usual business when around 9 p.m, just as darkness was falling, they spotted a red glowing object on the horizon. Two of the witnesses were neighbours, Mrs. Bowen and Mrs. Stevenson, who both saw the object fly across the horizon and land in a field near to Heatherset Walk. They both recall clearly what they saw. Mrs. Bowen said, "It seemed like a saucer, and it changed in different colours, a red, then into a greenish colour, and then a blue." Her neighbour, Mrs. Stevenson, continues, "Then the object started to glow bright red, as if someone had lit a bonfire in the middle of the field, and it spanned half the field. We could see the outline of it clearly, like a dome, but we couldn't see doors. There was no heat, just a red glow like a sunset." Mrs. Bowen recalls being very frightened after seeing the object, and shouting for her son to come inside, but nobody replied. There was also a deadly silence that came with the object. The pair couldn't hear any birdsong or everyday noises that could usually be heard from their homes. They say that other residents turned up to see what was going on. Some thought the fields were on fire because the sky was completely illuminated with a bright red glow. Mrs. Bowen and Mrs. Stevenson weren't the only ones to see the object. Many other locals had exactly the same experience, including a group of young boys who were out together playing in the fields nearby. One of these boys was Mrs. Bowen's son, Malcolm. Malcolm remembers being out with his friends when he saw the object, and some of them running away to investigate the lights. He said, "The rest of them ran off, and I just stayed there. It was just like an ordinary saucer, with a round sort of thing on top. We thought it was an aeroplane at first, but we all kept quiet. We saw it going round, and then we said it couldn't be an aeroplane. We couldn't hear any sound." His friends who were with him corroborated the story. "We saw it come over the fields, and it landed in the field. It was red, and then we ran up to see what it was. We saw a very bright glow. It went straight up in the air, spinning around, and then 10 to 12 seconds later, it went out of sight. A lady saw it over there and shouted, 'Look, it's there, taking off.' Police were called, but when they arrived, the object had gone." The police took the report from the lads and the locals very seriously. The officer who responded said, "We got there and we were met by a gang of children and 1 or 2 adults who informed us that they'd seen this glow in the sky, travelling from east to west or west to east. I can't remember exactly which. and that it had disappeared over the brow of the hill we were facing. The officer decided to send the children back home before heading off into the fields to investigate. The parents of the children were so adamant that this thing had happened, we thought we'd be on the safe side. We carried on to the top of the hill and could see no signs. We could see nothing at all. Although they couldn't find any trace of the object, the police did note that a nearby pub had lit up their new sign, and the officer just assumed it was the light from this that had confused the locals. After hearing of the strange sighting, local astronomers and UFO investigators Roger Stanway and Tony Pace were intrigued by the reports coming from Bentilee. They said, "The fact that a number of witnesses were quite worried and disturbed by what had occurred convinced us something really strange had happened on that Saturday night in September 1967. After finding no credible explanation from the police or air traffic control, they decided to travel to London to meet with members of the Ministry of Defence to discuss the sighting. They questioned them about the Bentilee landing, and the ministry did in fact agree that the event had taken place. However, they couldn't, or wouldn't, provide an explanation as to what had exactly gone on. For me, there's no doubt that the residents of Bentilee saw something that evening. But was it a UFO? Or was there another explanation? The police closed the case, blaming it on the new pub sign. But if it was something as simple as a new glowing sign, why did the Ministry of Defence accept that something had happened, but not provide that as the official explanation? Plus, would a sign on a pub be able to light up an entire field and make it seem as though it was on fire? Why didn't the residents experience the same thing every night the sign was turned on? Nobody knows, but for now, the Bentilee landing remains a mystery.